So in a previous video, I said that it could be possible that Loki has either a resin fruit or a plastic fruit that is a play on Luffy's fruit. This may be more likely because I think Elbaf is going to reference previous arcs in which giants played a big part in. And this is turning out to be true because in chapter 1132, we are introduced to another long statement by Lewis Arnott, and we are introduced to the Sun Painter stones, which produce rainbows of which the giants can sail on. Both of these things do have cousins in Little Garden, the first time in which we are introduced to giants as a race through Brocky and Dory, because the first time that we are introduced to Lewis Arnott is in a book called Brag Men, in which we have a statement for him as well as he's talking about Brocky and Dory and their relationship to Little Garden. We are also introduced to Miss Goldenweek, who could use a painting technique called color traps. Said paint had very unusual properties that we see even furthermore in the Baroque Works cover story, which I've covered before. And then that leads into the Sun Painter stone, in which the light produced from that stone gives the resulting rainbow very unusual properties. But in talking about Baroque works, it's very interesting when you consider that both in Little Garden and I guess Baroque works as a whole, you do have very similar characters that exist in Dressrosa's Don Quixote family, because both in Dressrosa and in Little Garden, giants are a big deal. Both are a part of the giant warrior pirate generations, Brocky and Dory being the supposed second generation of the giant warrior pirates, and then Haruden and Dressrosa being the most current iteration of the giant warrior pirates, called the new giant warrior pirates. With that being said, in Little Garden, the antagonists are Mr. 3 with the Wax fruit, Makita or Miss Valentine's Day with the Kilo fruit, and Mr. 5 or Jim with the Bomb fruit. These guys parallel to Gladius of the Don Quixote family, who has the Pop fruit, very similar to the Bomb fruit, but not quite the same. Then we have Machweiss. Machweiss is the guy who has the Tun fruit, and he actually directly fights Haruden. And the Tun fruit is actually canonically superior to the Kilo fruit, and this is brought up in an SBS. So that leaves the Wax fruit to talk about. As I've said in another video, I think that the Wax fruit is a part of the special paramecia class. I also think that in Dressrosa, we actually have two other special paramecias, those being the sticky fruit of Treble and the string fruit of Don Quixote do Flamingo, as both of them, both in their normal abilities and awakened abilities, have very similar powers to Charlotte Katakuri of Whole Cake Island. As Charlotte Katakuri and Don Quixote do Flamingo can turn their surrounding areas into their generated substance, then I do highly think, based on how Treble acts throughout the Dressrosa arc, that like Treble, Katakuri is always wearing an armor of Mochi disguised to look like his actual body, though he is more adept with it than, say, Treble, who Treble, in contrast, is using a similar technique, but he's using it to make himself look bigger. It looks like his actual body, and there are a few times in which he seems to be harmed fatally, but he is able to escape, thus making me think that he is on the cusp of getting close to where Katakuri is at, but he is still far off, because in the way that he is cut in various instances, it seems as though the mucus that he produces also has a ton of space within it. This is very similar to Charlotte Katakuri, who can make his staff come out of his arm, though he never transforms his staff into mochi, and his staff or trident is taller than he is. So that makes me think that special paramecias might have some sort of spatial property to them. This brings us back around to Mr. 3 and Loki. I think while Mr. 3 is the equivalent of a special paramecia in Little Garden and the first one we technically meet in the story, I think this will be paralleled with Loki, as he too, like Mr. 3, can produce perhaps a large amount of white material with special properties. So with that being said, I think the Mr. 3 equivalent of Elbaf that references back to Little Garden will be Loki with a supposed resin or plastic fruit. I hope that wasn't too much of a word salad and it could be followed. But to break it down again, Little Garden and Dressrosa have very interesting parallels to Elbaf, as similar things present in those arcs have already appeared in the Elbaf arc. So I think there will be more in the future, seeing as how both in Little Garden and Dressrosa, giants play a big role. And then all those characters who played a big role in those two arcs are now basically main characters in Elbaf, those being the second generation of the Giant Warrior Pirates and the third and newest iteration called the New Giant Warrior Pirates, headed by Hyrden. So with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede. What's it?